The manhunt continues for the person who shot and killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk. We should tell you we're expecting an update from officials at 9:30 Eastern Time. We're going to bring that to you live as soon as it happens. But today, the FBI released photos of a person of interest in their investigation. They have not said that individual is the suspect, but state law enforcement has referred to that person as the potential shooter. Just about an hour ago, Utah public safety officials released even more photos of that person of interest, showing the person was also carrying a backpack. The FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. All of this stems from the horrific scene that played out yesterday on the campus of Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk was speaking to a crowd of about 3,000 people. The shooter is believed to have fired the fatal shot from the rooftop of the university building approximately 520 feet away. An official said they believe the shooter arrived on campus less than 30 minutes before firing the shot that killed Charlie Kirk. Video from a bystander on the university campus shows what appears to be an individual fleeing across that rooftop in the moments just after the shot was fired. Today, authorities said they have found a high-powered bolt-action rifle, which they believe the shooter used in the attack. That gun was found less than a quarter-mile from the scene in the wooded area where the shooter fled. Police have been retracing the shooter's steps and have recovered a footwear impression and a palm print for forensic analysis. But in an interview with NBC News earlier today, Commissioner Bo Mason of the Utah Department of Public Safety said that by now, the suspected shooter could be anywhere.
I know you can't say too much here, but is it your understanding that this individual may be close by or still in Utah?
We have no idea. We're exploring leads for individuals out of state and individuals that live close by. We literally have persons of interest, tips coming in on the tip line that are spanning far and wide.
That is the latest on where this investigation stands ahead of tonight's press conference, which is expected to begin in less than 30 minutes. Joining me now, MSNBC investigative correspondent Mark Santilla, senior White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, and justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And thank you all so much for being with us. So, Mark, I want to go back to that sound. This afternoon, you have state officials saying, quote, they have no idea where the shooter might be. What does that tell you about the state of this investigation?
It tells us, and you can also see by the photos that they've disseminated, they're desperate for information. Mm-hmm. They're trying, Alicia, to figure out who they're looking for. They're looking for that identity. At this point, and you heard the police commissioner say they have no idea if he's hiding, if he's on the run. They are looking for that information. What I thought was very interesting this morning, the first press conference, the commissioner said they had excellent video, very good stills, but they weren't going to release those images to the public. They're going to try to identify that person on their own using technology, be it facial recognition technology, other databases. They said, if we don't get that, we'll reach out to the public. They sent the first photos. The photos you saw of the person of interest with the face straight on face shots, and then nothing. Those leads came up fruitless. They released more photos to the public. So right now, I think, Elisa, you can see there's a desperate search for information. There is that reaching out to the public, cops and community sort of working together, that force multiplier, if you will, hoping for the break in the case.
And Ken, this upcoming press conference, we've been talking about it since this afternoon. Any indication of why the FBI director would fly to Utah to be there in person?
I have some theories about that, Alicia, but first I just want to say I thought it was remarkable that the head of Utah's public safety department just flatly said, not only we have no idea where he is, we have no idea who he is, because that's really been left up in the air. The FBI has not been revealing much about the status of their information, and I've heard from sources behind the scenes that there were some promising leads today, and of course they've found the rifle and they've got some other evidence, and they've got obviously these photos, but it's just remarkable that 24 hours later they don't know where this person is, even within hundreds of miles. He made very clear, like he could be close, he could be far away. So that's something worth noting, and maybe we'll get more information at this news conference. In terms of FBI Director Kash Patel, it's interesting because his predecessor Chris Wray, who led the bureau for many years, did not tend to do this kind of thing, did not go to the scene of major events and mass shootings. He did go to the Las Vegas shooting early in his tenure, but after that, he sort of let the investigators do their job, and he wanted to stay out of the way. Kash Patel runs the FBI much differently, I've been told privately that he has been really anxious and even angry at times about the lack of progress in the investigation and has been raising his voice to subordinates, urging them on. Now, this is a man who doesn't have really any experience running a law enforcement agency before he got this job. So he doesn't really understand how these kinds of manhunts play out, but he's coming to the scene, and he's also a man who likes to post on social media, and he posted inaccurate information last night on social media saying that they had captured the shooter and then had to retract that statement. So he's coming here with the hopes, and with his deputy Dan Bongino, with the hopes of being in the middle of this investigation and sort of sending the message that he is in charge.
And again, that briefing starts at 9:30 Eastern. Vaughn, the president knew Charlie Kirk personally. Does that affect the way the government is handling this investigation right now?
Absolutely. You have somebody who clearly assassinated Charlie Kirk and with the intention of doing harm and not only killing Charlie Kirk, but also this is somebody who was a close friend of so many in this administration, the vice president, J.D. Vance. And so undoubtedly, especially knowing that, look, that these public figures intend to take part in his funeral services, that there are, of course, intents on having public gatherings to celebrate the life of Charlie Kirk. Donald Trump this morning said that he was going to give him the Presidential Medal of Freedom and that there would be a big event in Washington, D.C. We saw J.D. Vance arrive to Utah here today and escort the casket of Kirk's back to Arizona. We saw him on the tarmac there in Arizona helping carry that casket. The President of the United States suggested that next weekend he will be attending the funeral of Kirk's in Phoenix here. So, of course, time is of the essence, and understanding that Kirk had close relationships with some of the highest government officials. And so there is a moment here where they would, on one hand, of course, to ensure the safety of others, but also to be able to get a better understanding of what the motive clearly was behind this individual, because with every passing day, there is more speculation about who this individual is, what the motivation outside of the attempt to clearly assassinate Charlie Kirk, and one in which we have already heard the president here this evening suggest he has early indications of what the motive may have been. That is not clear what the president is talking about. Don Jr., his son, mentioned earlier transgender individuals. It is not clear what he meant about that. And then Tulsi Gabbard here this evening was also talking about the assassination, the president saying that there's a group of lefty lunatics. And so I think that with every passing hour and day, this only becomes more troubling for the safety of the public and of officials, but also of the ability to get an understanding of who this individual was and what their intention was by assassinating Charlie Kirk.
Mark, I have covered more shootings than I care to admit, and there is always a tension, a push and pull between those who are conducting the investigation, need cooperation from the public, but need to keep some details very close to the vest. We have a lot of information that's come to light today. The fact that we now have a timeline, the fact that we have photos. We're going to hear in just a few minutes from the FBI about what more they may have garnered. That said, the fact that some of these elements have been released and then pulled back, the fact that there are elements that have been released that some of our own analysts are surprised by, the fact that they are allowing the footprint piece of information, that they're saying we have that in some ways could signal to a suspect, get rid of your footwear immediately. They now have a clue and are on to you. How much does it complicate an investigation like this to have certain pieces of information floating around?
I think, Alicia, to your point, I think everything released is released intentionally. There are conversations behind the scenes. What are we putting out there? The first images today that we saw were stills of the person of interest's face. The most recent photos, Alicia, that you're looking at, it's highlights, right? You take a look at those photos. It's a sweatshirt with an American flag. They're very specific, very deliberate, because investigators want the public to focus on certain things. They have that timeline, 28 minutes from the time the person of interest was on campus until the trigger was pulled. Now, even before that, was that sweatshirt, very specific sweatshirt? Did someone remember seeing that? Maybe off campus, maybe before, maybe there was a gas station. What stands out? And you look at what investigators are putting out to the public, to the media right now. The sweatshirt with the American flag, The backpack, one of the photos is on the backpack. This photo here, right? The hat. There's a specific marking on the hat. There's that backpack. There's the hat. There's the American flag sweatshirt. Does that ring a bell? And Alicia, you also have the public now, and you've covered these cases where there's web sleuths. There's that backpack, a very specific backpack with the zippers. You have web sleuths. You have people at home who are looking, what kind of backpack is that? Where can you purchase that backpack? I covered extensively the murder of the CEO, the healthcare CEO, right here in Midtown. It took days before an arrest was made. It took days before the NYPD knew who they were looking at, but they would continue to release information and photos as they developed. And you saw little by little breaks in the case, and they relied heavily on the community. In that case, Luigi Mangione, who was arrested, was identified by a McDonald's worker hundreds of miles away in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And that came days after the CEO was shot and killed here in Midtown Manhattan. So everything, like investigators we talk to tell us right now investigators are tracking down several leads. They thought they had several promising leads today. Many of those leads came up empty.